From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, January 25th, 2021. You'll excuse my voice, but the Omicron has made its way into my body. So I am a bit scratchy in my throat. So you'll excuse that this morning, folks, but I'm A-okay. My third time getting COVID. At this point, it's like the common cold to me. Just fine. Just the throat is the only thing that's bugging me, and a little bit of my energy, but outside of that, I'm perfectly okay. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this morning. We've got a packed show today. DHS already letting us know, hey, we might be looking at an increased cyber activity from Russia. We'll talk about what that means. Yesterday, we talked about the Maersk lawsuit that they won in the New Jersey Superior Court. Talk about that as well. And new macOS backdoors. Attackers are now actively targeting a specific Log4j and Mirai botnet are all coming together. Canada experiences a cyber attack as well. Their foreign ministry does. And Belarus activists take over the train system in Belarus. All that and more on today's show. Before we do that, though, let's give a quick shout out to KnowBe4 for their support of today's program. Before we do that, let's get into some shout outs here. Scott, good morning to you. Good morning to Brent, Eddie, Paul, Matt, John, James, Eddie, what's happening, brother? Finley, and Mr. McQuiggan says, drinks lots of fluid. Get the Ricola. I got the Ricola, man. I've got it all ready to go. I've got my scotch behind me, Took COVID down twice, no problem taking it down one more time, just for the sake of this is Ollie Frazier 3 in my book. So let's get her done as well. Good morning to David B as well. All right, folks, let's get into our. Before we do that, though, where would I be if I did not have my double espresso? I could have COVID. I could be sick. People said, James, you should drink tea. Chris Roberts might be like, mate, drink your tea. And I'm like, sticking to my coffee, my Italian double espresso. Hope you're enjoying whatever you're drinking this morning. Coffee cup cheers. All right, let's get into the DHS warning that Americans should be prepared for potential Russian cyber attacks. The Department of Homeland Security sent out a bulletin on Sunday to critical infrastructure operators, local governments, warning about the potential for cyber attacks launched by the Russian government. These attacks would be in response to any U.S. involvement in a potential war in the Ukraine, which, according to a lot of media, it's imminent. It's supposed to happen any moment now. The warmongering continues. The notice said that Russia maintains a range of offensive cyber tools that it could employ against U.S. networks, from low-level denial of service to destructive attacks targeting critical infrastructure. We assessed that Russia would consider initiating a cyber attack against the homeland if it's perceived a U.S. or NATO response to a possible Russian invasion of the Ukraine threat and its long-term national security. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This is very geopolitical, very kind of like, let's issue a warning, let's put us all on alert. Here's the thing about what you need to know about Russian mentality altogether. They don't see an attack on the U.S. from a cyber perspective to be in their best interest, because they know it's not going to do anything to deter what the U.S. will or will not do with this whole incursion per se, or conflict with the Ukraine. Putin has a very specific goal in eastern Ukraine, and it's very, very specific. He does not want Ukraine to be part of NATO. He's concerned that if the Ukraine is part of NATO, there's going to be troop buildups within the Ukraine. That's right on the Russian border. That is, that's the Russian equivalent to the Chinese Taiwan, right? How China views Taiwan is how Russia views Ukraine. It's its little sister. It's hub. A lot of business goes through at the Ukraine from Russian interests. Donetsk, the eastern city of the Ukraine, one of the largest cities in eastern Ukraine, it's very strategic for the Russians. They see it as being part of something greater. Also, let's not forget, in 2014, back when the Russians took over Crimea, they wanted to have they needed a land mass into Crimea. And that's why they've kept kind of like Eastern Ukraine within the insurgency, as how the Ukrainians call it. But it's really just that piece. Russia's cyber activities are going to be targeted towards Europe. And they're going to be targeted towards European nations that are going to try to support the Ukrainians in some way. You could look at the UK as being part of it. You could look at France, Finland, Norway, Moldova, a lot of different countries, Estonia, so forth. There's going to be some stuff there that we're going to see. The Russians are not going to launch U.S. attacks unless they perceive something of that nature, and they know once they do that, then it's going to bring a whole different response level to that. So keep your eyes out for that. I take that with just a little bit of warmongering going on right now. Hackers are infecting macOS with a new DazzleSpy Backdoor in a watering hole attack. A previously undocumented cyber espionage malware aimed at Apple's macOS operating system is leveraging a Safari web browser exploit as part of a watering hole attack targeting politically active pro-democracy individuals in Hong Kong. I wonder who could be behind this one. The attack chain involved compromising a legitimate website belonging to D100 Radio, a pro-democracy internet radio station in Hong Kong, to inject malicious inline frames, aka iframes, between September 30th and November 4th of last year. In the next phase, the tamper code acted as a conduit to load a MacOS file by leveraging a remote code execution bug in a WebKit that was fixed by Apple in February of 2021. The exploit used to gain code execution in the browser is quite complex and had more than 1,000 lines of code, once formatted nicely according to ESET. The success of the WebKit remote code execution subsequently triggers the execution of an intermediate macOS binary that in turn exploits a new patched local privilege escalation vulnerability in the kernel component to run the next stage of malware as a root cause. While the infection sequence detailed by Google Tech culminated in the installation of an implant called MACMA, MACMA, the malware delivered to visitors of the D100 radio site was a new macOS backdoor that ESET has codenamed DazzleSpy. The malware provides attacker a large set of functionalities to control and exfiltrate files from a compromised computers. The researchers explain, in addition to incorporating a number of other features, including harvesting system information, executing arbitrary shell commands, dumping iCloud keychain using the CVE 2019-8526 exploit, starting or terminating remote screen sessions, and deleting itself from the machine, all going on. And, I wonder who's going to be behind the pro-democracy radio in Hong Kong. Won't hold my breath for this one. If you are using SonicWall, attackers are now actively targeting critical SonicWall RCE bugs. The critical vulnerability that's impacting the SonicWall secure mobile access gateway addressed last month is now being targeted in an ongoing exploitation attempt. The bug, which was found by Rapid7 lead security researcher Jacob Baines, is an unauthenticated stack-based buffer overflow track to CV 2021-238-20038 that impacts SMA 100 series appliances, including SMA 200, 210, 400, 410, and 500V. Even when the web application firewall is enabled, successful exploitation can let remote unauthenticated attackers execute code as the nobody user in the SonicWall perspective. Richard Warren, principal security consultant at NCC Group, said that the threat actors are now attempting to exploit the vulnerability in the wild. Warren added that attackers are also trying to brute force their way in by password spraying known SonicWall appliances' default passwords. They don't look successful as far as I can tell, according to Warren. Using that exploit, you need to make a huge number of requests, close to probably like 1 million, and they are probably just trying their luck and don't understand the exploit itself. There is a patch for this, so make sure you are patching them. Our next story is a Log4Shell story. We haven't talked about Log4Shell in a few weeks, so let's get right to it. The critical unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability, which was identified in early December of 2021, hasn't seen the mass exploitation that many expected, meaning we were kind of thinking that this was going to be SolarWinds on steroids. That hasn't really materialized yet. However, the Mirai botnet arsenal is using Log4j as part of its infrastructure. Both cybercriminals and nation-state threat actors have been observed exploiting the security bug in their attacks and assaults targeting industrial organizations. Even though there's been no mass exploitation of the vulnerability to date, that's most likely because the industry really went in, started patching, started taking care of it, started disabling, doing all the things that we should have done as a community to come together. So Log4j exploitation is now moving to the Mirai botnet, which is using it for a distributed denial of service attack, DDoS attacks, backing the code to exploit the Log4 shell vulnerability, according to Akamai. The exploit itself appears designed to specifically target devices from Zexal, which already confirmed impact from the vulnerability itself. So keep your eyes out for that. Canada's foreign ministry was hacked and some services are down. Oh, our Canadian friends, how the. The Canadian government Department for Foreign and Consular Relations, Global Affairs Canada, was hit by a cyber attack last week, and while critical services remain accessible, access to some online services is currently not available as the government systems continue to recover from the attack itself. The Global Affairs Canada faced significant network disruption. GAC is the Canadian government department responsible for looking after the country's diplomatic and consular relations, international trade, and leading international development and humanitarian assistance programs. In the statement, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, Shared Services Canada, and Communication Security Establishment together confirmed that the cyber incident involving Global Affairs Canada took place sometime last week. The attack itself was detected on January 19th, and they took some mitigation efforts. The attack comes amid the Ukrainian-Russian. There's nothing to point to this. Let me tell you something. On the world stage, no one looks at Canada and goes, oh man, let's not tick off the Canadians. Sorry to anyone who's Canadian watching. It's just not reality. This is most likely, we've seen the pattern of targeting foreign ministries. That's typically been the Chinese. I know Russia's the hottest item on the market today, but Russia doesn't do this kind of stuff. They don't. They really don't. This is most likely China. But while everyone's piling things on the Russians, let's keep piling things on the Russians from our friends over in Canada. Let's not forget that the North Koreans were targeting the Russian foreign ministry on behalf of the Chinese just last month. So the fact that there's no attribution here, they say that it's Russian, but it's not. You'll see. Again, and our final story today is Belarusian activists launch a ransomware attack against railway in protest of dictatorship and Russian troop surge in the nation. The Belarusian cyber partisans demanded the release of 50 political prisoners and the removal of all Russian troops from the country. Belarus is being used as another staging place for a possible Ukrainian invasion. The Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko has been a dictator in Belarus for ages. He, in fact, rigged the last election and then sent the his candidate, who technically should have won the election by all means, to the Ukraine in exile. And now you see where things are going there. So the Belarusian cyber partisans took to Twitter to say they've encrypted the network of the Belarusian railways, crippling the system and disrupting ticket sales. The group criticized Lukashenko and provided a list of demands in exchange for the encryption keys needed to unlock the system. We have the encryption keys. They want the release of 50 political prisoners who are most in need of medical assistance and preventing the presence of Russian troops on the territory of Belarus. Belarusian activist and spokesperson for the group told ZDNet that their goal was to disrupt the railway system so it can indirectly affect the Russian troops using it for the purposes of building up an attack on the Ukraine. According to the Washington Post, the Belarusian Defense Ministry said on Monday that Russian troops were coming to the country for military exercises. Russia is also sending 12 Su-35 fighters and 2 S-400 battalions and a Pantir S air defense system to Belarus as part of the troop movement. Again, this is another critical former USSR nation for Belarus, for the Russians. They've been supporting Lukashenko since the 90s and early 2000s, and he's been in the rule in Belarus as well. So keep your eyes out for this one as well. Everything that we're seeing going on right now from a cyber perspective and geopolitical is going to translate into our organizations at some point or another. Because here's what's going to happen. They're doing these exploits, these ransomwares, these sophisticated cyber attacks. Eventually, these things are going to calm down. And then that tech is going to be used against their organizations. So you use this time to beef up your defenses, start looking at what they're doing, the TTPs and IOCs. If you don't have contacts within the FBI and CISA within your organization, reach out to your local CISA representatives or FBI. Start to get some of that threat intel if you don't have a threat intel provider as well, and start to beef up your defenses. Because at some point, this whole thing between Russia and Ukraine is going to go away. And all of those cyber tools that they've been using across the entire landscape to target all these governments are going to get turned around and move there as well. I'm surprised James hasn't mentioned anything about the 8,500 U.S. troop response versus the 175 Russian buildup. It's not cyber related. Number two, I honestly think that's a bluff. I don't think we're going to send 8,500 troops to the Ukraine. I don't think we're going to send 8,500 troops to anywhere around Europe. I think we've made this what it is. There's geopolitical stuff, and if the Europeans don't care to defend the Ukraine, then why should we? Honestly, why should our boys and men go to defend the Ukraine that has no strategic interest to the U.S.? None. It's been corrupt since corruption. I lived in Kiev 10 years ago. I spent a whole year living in Kiev. Corruption is what corruption was back then, what it is today. The Russians seem to find that Ukraine is more of an asset to them. Europe is divided over how to respond over this, and this is happening in the continent of Europe. Why should we spend our taxpayer dollars and send our men and women in harm's way to defend something that the European themselves won't do? So that's just my opinion on this. Take it for what it is. Matt Lee, good luck, buddy. Go take the CFR 410 on Friday. Crush it. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with a lot more here on the Practitioner Brief Cyber News CyberHub Podcast. Make sure to subscribe. Go check out our brand new website, cyberhubpodcast.com. Some new features are coming really, really soon to our website, including if you want to do a keyword search to any of our podcasts and you go, I want to hear every time James talked about China, you'll be able to go to our website. You'll be able to look up China, and it'll give you the exact timeframes of every time we've brought up China. So you don't have to listen to the whole podcast. You can just get that 3-4 minute snippet of that stuff. So really cool stuff. Go check out the CyberHub Podcast. Make sure to subscribe right there to our newsletter. There's a lot more stuff coming your way there to make your life so much easier in consuming our content. Till then, we'll be back tomorrow right here at 9 a.m. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, folks, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.